The air crackled with anticipation, more than just for the blue or pink smoke. Amelia clutched her burgeoning belly, a smile plastered on her face, a perfect illusion for the hundreds of guests. Her millionaire husband, Julian, stood beside her, his arm a possessive weight. But Amelia's eyes kept drifting to the woman in crimson, Serafina, Julian's colleague, whose predatory gaze seemed to pierce right through her. Tonight wasn't just about revealing her baby's gender. It was about revealing a devastating truth, a truth Amelia would ensure would explode with more impact than any celebratory cannon. The stage was set not for a party, but for a spectacular, life-altering reckoning. Amelia Worthington Thorne had once believed in fairy tales. Marrying Julian Worthington, the charismatic scion of a real estate empire, had certainly felt like stepping into one. Their sprawling Bel Air mansion with its panoramic views of Los Angeles, their whirlwind trips to Monaco on private jets, the endless parade of designer gowns, it was a life most only dreamed of. Julian was attentive, charming, and generous, at least in the beginning. He'd swept her off her feet, a successful architect in her own right, and convinced her that his world could be hers, too. For 5 years, the illusion held. Amelia had traded her drafting table for charity galas, her site visits for society luncheons. She loved Julian, or at least the man he had presented himself to be. Now, pregnant with their first child, a deep, primal joy had blossomed within her, a joy she hoped would solidify their bond, perhaps even smooth out the subtle, almost imperceptible cracks that had begun to appear in their gilded cage. Lately, Julian had been distant. Stress from work, he'd murmur, his fingers tapping endlessly on his phone, his eyes avoiding hers. Late nights became more frequent. Hushed phone calls were taken in his study, and the scent of an unfamiliar, expensive perfume clung faintly to his Sutza fragrance, distinctly different from her own Chanel No. 5. Amelia had tried to dismiss her suspicions, blaming them on pregnancy hormones, on the inherent insecurity that sometimes gnawed at her in this world of smoke and mirrors. The gender reveal party was Julian's idea. A celebration for our little prince or princess, darling, he'd said, his smile a little too bright, his enthusiasm a shade too forced. Nothing but the best. We'll have Corbin Catering and Events handle everything. Remember them from the Van Heusen Gala? Impeccable. Amelia had agreed, her heart fluttering with a mixture of excitement and a strange, inexplicable dread. She wanted this to be perfect, a testament to their enduring love, a public display to quell her own inner demons. She poured herself into the preparations, choosing a theme of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," envisioning a magical evening under the California sky. Blues and pinks subtly decorated their vast gardens, and a custom-built stage was erected near the infinity pool, ready for the grand announcement. A week before the party, Julian dropped the first bombshell. "Darling, I need to invite Serafina Monet to the gender reveal." Amelia paused, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "Serafina Monet? I don't think I know her." "She's a new associate. Very important for the upcoming Dubai project. It's purely for business, networking. It would be rude not to include her, especially since she's in town." He didn't meet her eye, fiddling with his Cartier cufflinks. A cold knot formed in Amelia's stomach. The name was unfamiliar, yet something in Julian's forced casualness set her teeth on edge. "To our baby's gender reveal, Julian? A business associate I've never met? Isn't that a bit impersonal?" "Don't be difficult, Amelia," he said, his tone sharpening slightly. "It's just a courtesy. She won't be the only business contact there. It's how this world works. You know that." His world, not necessarily hers. The distinction, once blurred, was becoming starker. Amelia didn't argue further, but the seed of profound unease had been firmly planted. That night, she couldn't sleep. The name Serafina Monet echoed in her mind. Driven by an instinct she couldn't ignore, she slipped out of bed and went to Julian's study. His laptop was closed, but his personal tablet lay on the mahogany desk. It was usually locked, but she knew his patterns, his preferred codes. Her fingers trembled as she typed in a sequence of numbers: his birthday, their anniversary. Both failed. Then she tried the groundbreaking date of his first solo skyscraper. Click. It opened. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She navigated to his emails, then his messages. It didn't take long. Hidden in a secure messaging app she hadn't recognized was a folder simply titled S. Inside were messages, explicit messages, photos, hotel bookings, records of lavish gifts. A Birkin bag here, a diamond tennis bracelet there. And the recipient, the sender of equally passionate replies, was Serafina Monet. There were pictures of her, too, a striking woman with fiery red hair, sharp features, and an air of unapologetic confidence. The woman in the photos wore the unfamiliar perfume. Amelia felt the blood drain from her face. The screen blurred as tears welled, hot and furious. It wasn't just an affair, it was a relationship, a parallel life Julian had been living, funded by their shared fortune, under her very nose. The Dubai project was real, but Serafina wasn't just an associate. She was clearly his lover. The casual invitation to their most intimate family celebration was not a courtesy, it was a brazen act of disrespect, a deliberate blurring of lines that made Amelia sick to her stomach. The fairy tale shattered. Its pieces fell around her like shards of glass, each one reflecting Julian's deceit. The gilded cage had become a prison of lies, and her baby, their innocent child, was about to be born into this charade. No. Not if she could help it. A new feeling began to replace the crushing despair, a cold, hard anger. Julian wanted to invite his mistress to their baby's gender reveal. Fine. Let her come. Amelia Worthington might have been a society wife for 5 years, but she hadn't forgotten the resilient, intelligent architect she once was. She wouldn't just crumble, she would rebuild. And first, she would demolish. The party was in 6 days. 6 days to plan, to pivot, to turn Julian's stage into her own. The theme, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, suddenly felt like a cruel joke. Her baby's future wouldn't be a gentle twinkle. It would be a supernova, burning away the falsehoods. And Amelia would be the one to light the fuse. The next few days were a masterclass in deception, a role Amelia found herself playing with chilling proficiency. Outwardly, she was the radiant mother-to-be, excitedly discussing final arrangements with Mrs. Gable from Corbin Catering, approving floral arrangements and tasting miniature desserts. Inwardly, she was a woman reborn, fueled by a potent cocktail of grief, fury, and a steely resolve she hadn't known she possessed. She studied Serafina Monet online. The woman was a high-flying executive in a rival development firm, known for her aggressive tactics and rumored ruthlessness. Her social media profile was a carefully curated montage of luxury travel, power meetings, and a lifestyle that mirrored Julian's. There were no overt pictures of them together, but Amelia, with her newfound hyper-awareness, noticed subtle overlaps, a shared view from a Monte Carlo hotel balcony, posted weeks apart, the same distinctive artwork in the background of different solo dinner shots. Julian hadn't just been careless, he'd been arrogant, believing Amelia too wrapped up in her pregnancy or too complacent to notice. The invitation to Serafina, Amelia insisted, should come from her. "It'll seem more personal, Julian, if I extend the welcome," she'd said, her voice saccharine sweet. Julian, relieved at her apparent acquiescence, readily agreed, blind to the glint in her eyes. Amelia penned the invitation on her finest Tiffany & Company stationery, her calligraphy perfect, each stroke concealing a silent vow. Her best friend, Chloe, a sharp-witted lawyer who had always been skeptical of Julian's seamless charm, was the first person Amelia confided in. They met at a quiet tea house in Pasadena, far from the prying eyes of Bel Air society. He did what? Chloe choked on her Earl Grey, her eyes wide with disbelief, then hardening with anger. That absolute I have no words. And he wants her at the gender reveal? The audacity is stratospheric. Amelia laid out the evidence, the messages, the photos, the chilling realization of how long this had been going on. I cried for a day, Chloe. Then I got angry. Now I'm strategic. Strategic? How? Chloe leaned forward, her legal mind already whirring. Divorce, asset freezing, public shaming. All of the above. Eventually, Amelia said, a grim smile playing on her lips. But first, the party. He wants to bring her into our home, to celebrate our child while betraying us both. He thinks I'm a fool. I'm going to use his own stage to correct that misconception. Chloe's eyes lit up. Oh, Amelia. This is going to be better than any courtroom drama I've ever handled. What's the plan? Amelia outlined her intentions, the nascent idea of turning the gender reveal itself into a different kind of revelation. The main event uses those big confetti cannons, right? The ones that shoot out pink or blue smoke and glitter. Corbin Catering handles the setup. They get the sealed envelope from Dr. Alastair tomorrow. Dr. Alastair was Amelia's obstetrician, the sole keeper of the baby's gender, which was to be delivered to the event planners in a sealed envelope the day before the party. This was standard practice for high-profile reveals, ensuring absolute secrecy and surprise. So, you're thinking of a color switch? Chloe asked. Not just a color switch, Amelia mused. Something more informative. I need to get to that envelope or, at least, control what goes into those cannons. And I need to do it without anyone, especially Julian or his snooping mistress, suspecting a thing. The challenge was significant. Corbin Catering was known for its professionalism and discretion. Breaching their protocols would be difficult. Amelia spent the next 2 days observing. She attended a final walkthrough with Mrs. Gable, feigning interest in napkin folds and lighting cues, all the while mapping out the backstage area, security camera blind spots, and the exact procedure for handling the gender reveal mechanism. She noted that the cannons were prepared in a small, guarded tent behind the main stage a few hours before the event. The final loading of the reveal material was done by a senior Corbin technician. Her mind raced. She couldn't risk a direct swap of the envelope, it could be traced back to her. She needed a way to influence the outcome, not just the input. What if the cannons didn't just reveal a color? What if they revealed something else entirely? A daring idea began to form, sparked by a memory of a corporate event she'd designed years ago, where a product launch involved a surprise projection onto a screen that unrolled simultaneously with confetti. Meanwhile, Julian was almost jovial, relieved that Amelia was being so understanding. He even brought home a gift for her, a diamond necklace. For being the most wonderful wife and mother-to-be, he'd said, his voice smooth as silk. Amelia had accepted it with a radiant smile, the diamonds feeling like ice against her skin. She wore it when Serafina Monet arrived at their doorstep 2 days before the party, ostensibly for a pre-event consultation with Julian about some fabricated detail of the Dubai project. Amelia had insisted on being present. Serafina was even more striking in person. Tall, impeccably dressed in a razor-sharp Armani suit, her auburn hair styled in a sleek bob. Her handshake was firm, her green eyes assessing Amelia with an unnerving intensity. There was no hint of apology or discomfort in her demeanor, only a cool, almost triumphant confidence. She moved through their home as if she already owned a part of it. Your home is lovely, Amelia, Serafina commented, her voice a low purr, as Julian showed her the patio where cocktails would be served. Julian has such exquisite taste. The emphasis on Julian was not lost on Amelia. He does, Amelia replied, her smile unwavering, though sometimes his acquisitions can be a little fleeting. Serafina's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Julian, oblivious, chuckled. Amelia's got a keen sense of humor. The tension between the two women was a silent, crackling current beneath the veneer of polite conversation. Serafina made a point of touching Julian's arm, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes, staking her claim in Amelia's own territory. Each gesture was a fresh stab to Amelia's heart, but it only hardened her resolve. This woman, this serpent, would not slither into her life and destroy it without consequence. The party was no longer just about Julian's betrayal. It was about expunging Serafina's venomous presence as well. The plan forming in Amelia's mind became bolder, more audacious. It had to be flawless. It had to be unforgettable. The day before the party, Dr. Alistair's crisp, sealed envelope was hand-delivered to Mrs. Gable at Corbin Catering headquarters. Amelia watched from her car across the street, her heart a frantic drum. The first crucial piece was in motion. Now for the infinitely more complex part, intercepting the reveal itself. The envelope was Corbin's responsibility now, but Amelia knew that the actual contents, the colored powder or confetti, would be loaded into the cannons on site on the day of the party. Her initial idea of simply swapping the doctor's note was too risky. It could be traced. She needed something more direct, affecting the output, not just the input. Chloe, ever resourceful, had a cousin, Leo, who freelanced as an event technician, sometimes even for high-end companies like Corbin. He wasn't on their regular payroll, which made him a potential, deniable asset. After much persuasion from Chloe and the promise of a very generous consultation fee from Amelia's private accounts, money she'd inherited from her grandmother, untouched by Julian, Leo agreed to a discreet meeting. They met in a dimly lit booth at the Viper Room on Sunset Strip, a place Julian would never frequent. Leo was young, wiry, with intelligent eyes that darted around constantly. He was initially hesitant. Messing with a Corbin gig? They're serious players. If this goes sideways. It won't go sideways for you, Amelia assured him, her voice calm and firm. I'm not asking you to sabotage their equipment or ruin their reputation. I need a very specific, very subtle modification. And no one will ever know you were involved. She explained what she wanted. It wasn't about changing blue to pink or vice versa. Her plan was far more theatrical. She wanted to replace the colored confetti in the main cannons, or at least supplement it. So, you don't want colored smoke or confetti? Leo asked, intrigued despite himself. What do you want in there? Amelia slid a small, heavy satin pouch across the table. Leo picked it up, his eyebrows shooting up as he felt the contents. This feels like shredded paper, Amelia said. But not just any paper. These are printouts. Very specific printouts. She then showed him a sample on her phone, copies of the intimate messages between Julian and Serafina, screenshots of hotel bookings, even a heavily pixelated but still damning image of Julian kissing Serafina taken from a dimly lit restaurant, security footage that a private investigator, hired with more of her grandmother's money, had managed to procure. Each tiny shred would be a piece of their sordid secret. You want to shoot these out of the cannons? Leo was aghast. Then a slow grin spread across his face. That's diabolical. And brilliant. But the cannons are usually loaded with specific, color-coded cartridges. How do you propose we swap the contents? That's where your expertise comes in, Amelia said. The final prep for the cannons happens in a tent backstage. I'll create a diversion for the main Corbin tech at the crucial moment. You, looking like any other event staffer, will make the switch. It has to be fast. Leo considered it. The cartridges are usually sealed. I'd have to have pre-filled cartridges of the same type, loaded with your evidence confetti. And they have to be indistinguishable from the real ones. Can you do it? Amelia pressed. It's risky. But for the fee you're offering, he named a figure that made Amelia blink, but she nodded. And with a guarantee of anonymity, yeah. I can probably source identical blank cartridges and get them loaded. But what about the actual gender? Don't you want to know? Amelia paused. For a moment, the original intent of the party, the innocent joy of discovering her baby's sex, washed over her. A pang of sadness hit her. The truth is, right now, the baby's gender is the least of the secrets in this family. My doctor will tell me privately afterwards. For the party, the only thing I want revealed is the truth about Julian. But then a new, even more audacious layer to her plan clicked into place. Why stop at just the confetti? Actually, Leo, Amelia said, a new glint in her eye, I have another idea for the color. Something that will still give them a reveal, just not the one they're expecting. And I need your help with the lighting and projection system, too. She explained her revised vision. The cannons wouldn't just spew damning paper, they would spew paper of a specific, symbolic color. And simultaneously, the large screen behind the stage, meant for baby pictures or a "it's a boy/girl" message, would display something far more impactful. Leo listened, his initial apprehension turning into fascinated horror. Lady, you don't mess around, do you? Projection mapping, timed release. This is complex. But doable. With precise timing, and if your diversion is good enough, yes. Doable. The diversion was Chloe's department. As a lawyer, she was an expert at creating confusing, urgent scenarios. She would, at the precise moment, stage an emergency legal call for Mrs. Gable, the head planner, citing a sudden, fictitious issue with a vendor contract that required her immediate, undivided attention away from the prep tent. The day of the party dawned bright and deceptively calm. Amelia moved through the morning like a phantom, her mind a steel trap of timings and contingencies. Julian was blissfully unaware, fussing over his speech and occasionally patting her belly with a possessive pride that now made her skin crawl. Serafina was expected to arrive with the other guests. Amelia had made sure her name was on the A-list, right near the top. She wanted her front and center. Late afternoon, as the Corbin catering team buzzed around, transforming the estate into a wonderland of pastel dreams and twinkling lights, Leo, dressed in the standard black uniform of an event tech, blended seamlessly with the crew. He gave Amelia a subtle nod as he passed her, carrying a toolbox. Inside were not just tools, but carefully prepared confetti cartridges filled with thousands of shredded secrets, all printed on paper of a stark, undeniable color, crimson red. The color of shame, the color of a scarlet letter, the color Serafina so often wore. Amelia's heart pounded. Chloe was on standby, her phone charged, her lines rehearsed. The guests would start arriving in 2 hours. The stage was almost set. The architect of revenge was about to see her blueprint come to life. She thought of her baby, a tiny, innocent life caught in this maelstrom. This act, this public demolition, wasn't just for her. It was to ensure her child would be born into honesty, not into a gilded cage of lies. The cost would be high, the scandal immense. But freedom, she realized, was priceless. As twilight painted the Los Angeles sky in hues of lavender and rose, the Worthington estate began to glitter. Hundreds of fairy lights laced through the olive trees. Lanterns cast a warm glow over the manicured lawns, and the soft strains of a string quartet drifted through the air. Guests, a curated mix of old money, new tech billionaires, and Hollywood socialites arrived in a procession of gleaming Bentleys and Teslas, their diamonds and designer outfits sparkling under the strategically placed spotlights. It was the picture of opulent celebration, meticulously crafted by Corbin Catering and Events, and everyone murmured their admiration. Amelia stood beside Julian at the entrance to the main garden, a vision in a flowing, empire waist ivory gown that accentuated her pregnancy. Her smile was serene. Her eyes, however, held a predatory gleam that only Chloe, who arrived with a supportive squeeze of her arm, would have recognized. Julian, resplendent in a custom Tom Ford suit, was in his element, greeting his guests with booming laughter and backslapping bonhomie. He was the king in his castle, completely oblivious to the storm about to break. Then, Serafina Monet made her entrance. She was a slash of crimson in the sea of muted pastels and elegant blacks. Her dress, a figure-hugging couture creation, was the color of freshly spilled blood, a bold, almost defiant statement. Diamonds dripped from her ears and throat, and her auburn hair was swept up in an elaborate chignon. She moved with a sinuous grace, her eyes scanning the crowd before landing on Julian, then flicking almost dismissively to Amelia. "Julian, darling," Serafina purred, ere kissing him near the lips, her hand lingering on his arm a fraction too long. What a magnificent party. And Amelia, she turned, her smile thin and sharp, you look positively blooming. Serafina, Amelia replied, her voice smooth as honey yet laced with Arctic frost. So glad you could make it. Crimson is certainly your color. A flicker of something surprise, annoyance crossed Serafina's face before her composure returned. Thank you. I always believe in making an impression. Oh, you will, Amelia murmured, almost to herself, as Julian, beaming, steered Serafina towards the champagne fountain, already introducing her to a huddle of influential investors. Amelia watched them, a cold fury solidifying within her. Serafina wasn't just attending, she was behaving as if she were the lady of the manor, Julian's partner in every sense. The audacity was breathtaking. Chloe materialized beside Amelia, handing her a glass of sparkling cranberry juice. Showtime is approaching, partner. Leo is in position. The crimson confetti is loaded. He confirmed the primary cannons are now filled with your party favors. He's also patched into the main projection system. Are you ready for this? Amelia took a slow sip, her gaze fixed on Serafina, who was now laughing, her head thrown back as Julian whispered something in her ear. More than ready, Chloe. It's time to redecorate. The party progressed, a symphony of forced pleasantries and underlying tensions. Amelia circulated, the perfect hostess accepting congratulations and well wishes. All the while, her internal clock was counting down. She saw Julian introduce Serafina to more and more of their friends, their colleagues. My brilliant associate, Serafina Monet, he'd say, and Amelia could almost hear the unspoken words, the silent acknowledgement of a deeper connection that he thought was still his secret. About an hour before the scheduled reveal, Chloe executed her part of the plan. She approached Mrs. Gable, the Corbin event head, with a look of controlled panic. Mrs. Gable, I am so terribly sorry to interrupt, but I've just had an urgent call from our legal team regarding the pyrotechnics vendor. There seems to be a serious insurance discrepancy that needs your immediate sign-off, or they're threatening to pull their services for your next event. Mrs. Gable, a woman who prided herself on flawless execution, looked aghast. What? Now? Are you certain? They were quite insistent, something about a deadline expiring in the next 30 minutes, Chloe said, her voice firm and authoritative. They need your direct verbal authorization codes. I have them on the line in the West Wing study. Mrs. Gable, flustered and annoyed, excused herself and hurried off with Chloe, leaving the backstage prep area momentarily less supervised. This was Leo's window. Amelia, who had been discussing canopy choices nearby, saw him slip into the small, guarded tent behind the main stage. Her heart hammered. This was it. The point of no return. He had less than 5 minutes. She engaged the remaining junior technician in an animated conversation about the best angle for photos, her voice deliberately light and engaging, drawing his attention away from the tent. Every second stretched into an eternity. Then Leo emerged, calm and collected, giving her the tiniest, almost imperceptible nod before disappearing back into the throng of event staff. Relief washed over Amelia, quickly followed by a fresh surge of adrenaline. The crimson confetti was cast. As the appointed time for the reveal neared, a hush fell over the crowd. Guests gathered before the large, elegantly draped stage. Julian, beaming with pride, took the microphone. Welcome, everyone, he began, his voice amplified through the state-of-the-art sound system. Amelia and I are so thrilled to share this incredibly special moment with all of you, our dearest friends, family, and esteemed colleagues. His eyes found Serafina in the front rows, and he offered her a subtle, almost possessive smile, which she returned with a knowing look. Amelia, standing beside him, felt a chill despite the warm California air. Tonight, Julian continued, we find out whether we'll be buying tiny blue booties or pretty pink bows. Or maybe both, who knows? He chuckled, and the crowd laughed politely. But first, my wonderful, beautiful wife, Amelia, has a few words she'd like to share. He handed her the microphone, his hand briefly covering hers. His touch felt like a brand. Amelia stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the expectant faces, lingering for a moment on Serafina's smug expression, then on Julian's proud, oblivious smile. The entire garden seemed to hold its breath. The air was thick, not just with anticipation for pink or blue, but with the unspoken, the unseen, the betrayal that had festered for far too long. The crimson tide was about to roll in. Amelia gripped the microphone, her knuckles white, but her voice when she spoke was remarkably steady, resonating with a calm authority that captivated the audience. "Thank you, Julian," she began, her eyes locking with his, a silent storm brewing behind her composed facade. "And thank you all for being here to share this moment with us. A moment that is indeed about a new beginning, about unveiling a future." She paused, letting her words hang in the air. Julian beamed, misinterpreting her solemnity for the emotional gravity fitting the occasion. Serafina watched, a slight, almost bored smile on her lips, as if this were all a quaint domestic ritual she was indulging. "Before we discover the gender of our much-anticipated baby," Amelia continued, her gaze sweeping across the crowd, now resting pointedly on Serafina, "I want to talk about truth. About honesty. About the foundations upon which a family, a marriage, and indeed, any significant venture should be built." A few puzzled frowns appeared in the audience. This was not the typical effusive speech expected at a gender reveal. Julian shifted uncomfortably beside her, a flicker of unease in his eyes. "For months," Amelia's voice gained strength, "I've looked forward to this day, to the joy of this revelation. But I've also come to learn that some revelations are more illuminating than others. Some truths hide in plain sight, cloaked in expensive suits and whispered promises." Her eyes flicked to Julian, then back to Serafina. The mistress's smile had vanished, replaced by a guarded, wary expression. She sensed the shift, the undercurrent that was no longer celebratory. "Julian has always been a man of grand gestures," Amelia said, a humorless smile touching her lips. "And tonight, he wanted a grand reveal for our child. And a grand reveal is what he shall have." She turned slightly towards the backstage area, where the Corbin technicians including a now very alert Mrs. Gable, whom Chloe, having successfully detained her for precisely 7 minutes, stood ready by the cannon controls. Leo, from his discreet position near the AV booth, gave a tiny, almost invisible signal. "All systems go." "I believe it's customary for the parents-to-be to do the honors," Amelia announced, her voice ringing with newfound power. "Julian, darling, why don't you join me?" Julian, looking confused but trying to maintain his composure, stepped up beside her. "Of course, my love. Let's see what our little star will be." He reached for the ceremonial button that would trigger the main cannons. "Oh, I think this honor," Amelia said, gently but firmly moving his hand away, "should be all mine tonight. After all, I've been carrying this secret and others for quite some time." Before Julian could react, before anyone could quite process the shift in her demeanor, Amelia pressed the button. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening whoosh, the cannons exploded. But it wasn't blue, and it wasn't pink. Instead, a torrent of vibrant, shocking crimson confetti erupted into the twilight sky, showering down upon the stunned guests. Thousands upon thousands of tiny, shredded pieces of paper, each one a fragment of Julian and Serafina's illicit correspondence, rained down like a scarlet blizzard. Simultaneously, the enormous projection screen behind the stage, which was supposed to flash, "It's a boy," or "It's a girl," flickered to life. But instead of celebratory text, a crystal-clear, high-resolution image filled the screen. It was the photograph, the one her private investigator had procured, of Julian Worthington, his arm wrapped around Serafina Monet, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. The backdrop was unmistakably the balcony of a hotel suite in Dubai, the very project Julian had used as his alibi. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Whispers turned into shocked murmurs. Phones were instantly, reflexively raised, not to capture a joyous gender reveal, but to document the implosion of a marriage. The crimson confetti, the damning evidence, settled on the pristine lawns, on the designer gowns, on the horrified faces of the guests. Some people instinctively picked up the shreds, their eyes widening in disbelief as they recognized snippets of text, dates, and names. Julian stood frozen, his face ashen, his eyes wide with dawning horror as he stared at the giant image of his betrayal, then at the crimson rain of his own words. He looked like a man who had been struck by lightning. Serafina Monet's reaction was just as dramatic. Her face, moments before so smug and confident, contorted in a mask of fury and humiliation. The crimson confetti, the very color she had chosen to wear, now seemed to mock her, branding her in front of Julian's entire world. She looked from the screen to Amelia, her eyes blazing with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. Amelia stood center stage, untouched by the crimson rain, a solitary figure of righteous fury amidst the chaos she had unleashed. Her ivory dress seemed to glow in the ensuing pandemonium. She held the microphone loosely, her expression unreadable. Then she raised the microphone to her lips one last time, her voice cutting through the stunned silence that had momentarily fallen after the initial shockwave. "As for the gender of my baby," Amelia announced, her voice clear and unwavering, her gaze sweeping over the wreckage of her husband's reputation, "that is a precious secret that I will share with my child in a future built on truth, not on a bed of lies." She looked directly at Julian, whose face had crumpled into a mask of utter devastation. "Congratulations, Julian. You wanted a reveal. This is your revelation." With that, she gently placed the microphone on the stage, turned her back on him, on Serafina, on the shocked faces and the crimson-stained splendor of their once shared life, and walked away, her head held high. The architect had not just revealed a secret. She had demolished a facade, and in doing so, laid the first foundation stone for her own, and her child's, new beginning. The silence she left in her wake was louder than any explosion. The immediate aftermath was pandemonium. Julian, ghastly pale, stumbled back as if physically struck, his eyes darting between the colossal image of his infidelity and the stunned, accusing faces of his guests. Serafina, after a moment of frozen fury, hissed something incoherent and made a move as if to confront Amelia, but the sheer wall of shocked guests and clicking camera phones seemed to hold her back. She looked trapped, exposed, her carefully constructed image shattering around her. Whispers erupted into a cacophony. "Is that Serafina Monet from Monarch Developments? Those messages, are they real? My God, Julian Worthington at his own baby's party." The crimson confetti, still swirling in the slight breeze, became damning souvenirs, eagerly scooped up by the scandal-hungry attendees. Mrs. Gable of Corbin Catering looked like she was about to faint, her meticulously planned event now the epicenter of a high-society earthquake. Amelia didn't look back. Chloe was waiting for her at the edge of the garden, a car idling discreetly by a side gate, its engine a low thrum of escape. "That," Chloe breathed, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and concern as Amelia slid into the passenger seat, "was the single most spectacularly dramatic thing I have ever witnessed. Are you okay?" Amelia took a deep, shuddering breath, the adrenaline beginning to recede, leaving a hollow ache in its place. "Okay. No. But liberated?" "Yes." She touched her belly. "We're liberated." As they drove away from the Worthington estate, leaving behind the flashing lights of phone cameras and the rising din of scandal, Amelia finally allowed a few tears to escape. They weren't tears of sadness for Julian, but tears of release for the end of a lie, and for the daunting, uncertain, but undeniably her own future that lay ahead. The divorce proceedings were, as expected, acrimonious. Julian, his public image shattered, fought back with the ferocity of a cornered animal. But Amelia, with Chloe by her side, was prepared. They presented a meticulously compiled dossier of his infidelity and financial misdeeds. Faced with the threat of far greater public scandal and potential federal investigation, Julian's powerful father intervened. An agreement was reached. Amelia got a swift, clean divorce, full custody of her child, and a generous, independent trust fund for their upbringing. She wanted nothing else. True to her word, Amelia left Los Angeles. She found a charming historic house in a quiet coastal town in Northern California, a place known for its rugged beauty and artistic community. She reconnected with her architectural roots, taking on small, meaningful projects. She changed her name back to Amelia Thorne, shedding the Worthington identity like an ill-fitting coat. A few months later, in the peaceful solitude of her new life, Amelia gave birth to a healthy baby girl, whom she named Hope. Holding her daughter for the first time, Amelia felt a profound sense of completion, of a journey through darkness into a new, luminous dawn. One crisp autumn afternoon, about a year after the infamous party, Amelia was walking with baby Hope in a stroller along the rugged cliffs overlooking the Pacific. The air was clean, the sky vast and blue. She received a small, unexpected package in the mail. Inside, with no return address, was a single, perfect pink rose and a simple, unsigned card that read, "For Hope. May her life always be true." Amelia smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. She didn't know if it was from Leo, the tech, or some other unlikely sympathizer from her old life. It didn't matter. Pink or blue, the true revelation had been the one that set her free. She looked at her daughter, gurgling happily in her stroller, and knew that their future, built on courage and honesty, would be far brighter than any artificial sparkle Julian's world could have ever offered. The architect had not only designed her revenge, she had meticulously designed her own beautiful, unshakable world. Amelia's journey was a maelstrom of high-stakes betrayal, but ultimately, it's a powerful testament to a woman's incredible strength and resilience when pushed to her limits. She didn't just ingeniously change a gender reveal, she courageously rewrote her entire destiny, proving that even in the face of devastating deceit and public humiliation, dignity, intelligence, and courage can forge a new, empowered path. Her story reminds us that sometimes the most profound revelations aren't about pink or blue, but about the stark, unvarnished truth. What did you think of Amelia's audacious plan and her ultimate triumph? Could you have orchestrated such a bold move in her shoes? We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. If you were on the edge of your seat following Amelia's story, please give this video a huge thumbs up, share it with friends who appreciate a tale of justice served cold, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss another gripping story from our channel.